Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And today we've been to see Maestro.
Yes, in a theatre.
Yes.
We know it's showing on Netflix, but we wanted to see it on a big screen.
We is a big word.
So did you love it?
No. You wanted to see it, and I was like, yeah, fine. And I thought it was 2.5 hours. On the Electric's website, it said 150 minutes. So I was thrilled to discover that that's clearly a mistake, and it's just over 2 hours. Because we were out there half an hour sooner than I thought. I didn't hate the whole thing, but I didn't like it very much. I do kind of think that probably actors should never actually direct themselves, is kind of the conclusion. I think the only one who's ever really got away with it properly is Woody Allen. And the reason I think it works with him is because everything is so kind of meta.
Well, actually, I think also Clint Eastwood, and the reason for both, I think, is because they're not really actors. I mean, one is a comedian, the other one is a star, right? So I think you're right that he does a disservice to himself, and partly it's driven by generosity. I mean, he even gives
Carey
Mulligan top billing at the end of the credits, which, I thought was extremely generous.
So this is Bradley Cooper we're talking about. He's co-written and directed this.
Yes.
And stars in it as Leonard Bernstein.
I think it's very poorly written, by the way, like structurally. So scene to scene, you can argue. And I did find moments in the film absolutely thrilling. And really the reason why I wanted to see it in cinema is those black and white scenes at the beginning where he's told that he's conducting that day, and that scene with him opening up the curtain, and then you're seeing Matt Bomer in bed, and then the camera kind of floats, while he's running to the theater, and then it swoops in again, and you get that sense of excitement and thrill and sexiness, and it's all kind of beautifully visualized, I
think there's some real cinematic ambition.
Yeah, I thought it was thrilling.
And actually I was surprised at how into it I got. And so the film opens on a shot of very old Leonard Bernstein in his 70s, in widescreen in colour, and then it goes into his life in the 50s and 60s, which is full frame black and white. We move into the 70s, which is full frame in colour, and then right at the end we get back into the Monday. I think it's a little bit like we saw Poor Things recently, and that's the whole opening of that is in black and white, apart from the first few shots, which are in colour. And I think it's doing the same thing where it's saying, we are doing colour in this film, we are doing colour and widescreen, so don't turn it off, because if you just started on black and white Academy ratio, I think people would go, what is this? And I think they're kind of reassuring the audience that there is colour in this film. But that stuff in black and white early on, where everyone's smoking, everyone's smoking all the time anyway. Yes. But everyone's smoking all the time. Things are kind of beautifully sort of backlit and dramatically lit, and all the smoke is always illuminated beautifully. It's got a real classic look, and it evokes that era, and it evokes the look it's going for. Very, it's not just that it's like saying this is the 50s. It's saying this is like an image of the 50s and 60s.
And the excitement and the wit and the showbiz, thing. I really love that. That scene where they're doing Fancy Free, I think. He's written the ballet music, and then there's like the three sailors dancing, right? And one of them is clearly dancing at Bernstein, and there's like the sexual kind of thing happening. I thought that was all marvelous, really.
I didn't like that scene.
I love that scene.
Yeah. That scene was where I started to think, oh, you are losing me now.
No, I love that scene. But I think it's a dishonest film. It washes away many aspects of his life, so it shows them. So it shows Bernstein with men, and it shows him doing drugs and so on. But it doesn't dramatize, the kinds of psychological struggles and fears and, and so on that must have involved in all of those aspects of the decision-making, really. And then halfway through the film, or 3/4 of the way through the film, it shifts entirely onto her.
With her cancer.
But again, I just didn't feel it was dramatic because, at the very beginning, she says she's conscious of who he is and what decisions she's making. And basically, he's a genius. So, she's accepting of that. But you also don't get a sense of, the daily struggles and what it's cost them. And, and I also didn't understand the shift onto her. Her getting cancer and dying is not enough of a rationale. I mean, that could have been done in 2 minutes. It's not a rationale to give over that much of the film to her. I thought structurally the film was kind of misguided, really. Yeah.
Well, I spent basically the whole film, like at every individual moment in the film, going, what is the point of this? What am I supposed to be learning from this? What am I supposed to be feeling from this? It feels, it's illustrative, I think, rather than kind of exploratory, as it were. You go, okay, right, so I could read Leonard Bernstein's Wikipedia page and I could read this, this, and this, and I kind of see that represented here. But what am I feeling from this? What am I learning from this? And as you say, it's things like, what are the struggles in this couple's life? You get the occasional big scene. You get that one big scene where they have that. It kind of all comes out to some extent in the argument at the party. That's in the kind of 70s section. It's where you're supposed to kind of feel all the stresses that have been involved in this marriage. But you haven't felt them before then. You haven't felt them bubbling up. You've just kind of you've observed that. Leonard Bernstein is married to this woman. He also has multiple affairs with men and women. And it hasn't added up to a feeling. It's just been, yes, I have observed this. and now I see that she is finally lashing out about it.
I think the film is dishonest as well in the sense that it's ignoring the historical contexts, plural, that are a setting and a structure for these lives, right? 43, where it begins, is wartime, and certainly kind of, in the immediate post-war era, Gore Vidal writes very interestingly about kind of all the sexual excitement and, it's like this release from war and kind of, people having sex everywhere and so on. But, 47 is the beginning of the McCarthy era, really. The kind of the hearings on communism and anti-homosexuality and so on. It's very dangerous, to be gay, right? So this idea that people are kissing in public in the park, with no fear, and no sense of consequence. I mean...
I found that very unrealistic.
Bernstein might have done it once, but it doesn't kind of service the film to kind of treat it so casually. And then the whole of the latter half of the film, when she's dying of cancer, what does it mean for a man, now 70, whatever his age was, but beginning in 1980, say, so 60, where all of your friends and acquaintances are dying of AIDS. I mean, surely it must have been a fear for him. Were they still sleeping together? Is there a danger of transmission? Kind of what psychic toll is it taking on him, to have, certainly a large part of his community dying, right? Like, kind of, the film touches on none of the real complexities of a life like Bernstein's, who is such a singular and important figure in all kinds of ways. And I do think it doesn't do him justice.
I mean, I don't know that much about Leonard Bernstein, though I know the figure and I know the face, and I'm aware of his kind of status as the first great American conductor who was kind of recognised worldwide. And I've seen some, the film talks about, although it doesn't really show, his television shows.
Yes.
Where he explained in depth music. He taught people. That's one thing that's really interesting about him is he's a teacher.
Yeah, he's exciting to see in those programs, actually.
Yeah.
He's such a great teacher.
And we see him teach here. We see him teach here almost as much as we see him, probably as much as we see him conducting, which we also see a couple of times. And there's one particular scene, which is this concert. It's Mahler's Resurrection, I think, in Ely Cathedral. And I think they filmed it in Ely Cathedral. And one thing that Bradley Cooper was saying about making the film with Netflix was that he was able to do this full 5-minute performance of this movement which is wonderful, and that working with a normal studio, he wouldn't have been able to do that. So kind of that pays off. You know, I mean, my opinion on sort of Netflix movies, quote unquote. But that is something that Netflix appears to have given him the opportunity to do that he wouldn't ordinarily have had. I hold my hands up to that because it's worth it.
I mean, I honestly don't think that a film of this type would have gotten an $80 million budget for theatrical release outside of Netflix. I just don't think this type of film is on that budget is really kind of being done anymore outside of streaming.
I just come out of the film feeling like, nah.
Yeah,
like, I didn't come out feeling, oh, I hate this. I mean, I know I went in with just the lowest expectations, and you were going, oh, you're in such a mood, because I was on Facebook this morning saying, God, I'm being made to see this bloody thing. So like I went in with the lowest expectations, so maybe that partially explains why I come out not feeling completely antagonistic. But it's a film that has pace. I think it's got decent performances. I like the look of it.
Carey Mulligan, whom ever since she tried to get that Variety critic fired because he said she wasn't hot enough, I've despised her, really, because to me she embodies like this whole power class privilege, the idea of getting someone fired for doing his job. I just despise her, really. But she's fantastic in this. She won me over.
Yeah.
You know, she's really, really great. Yeah. I feel more ambivalent about Bradley Cooper's own performance, because I think it's like you say, he has wonderful moments, right? I think he's better when he's older in the film. When he's younger, actually, I think the prosthetic nose, which we should probably talk about, gets in the way. Because one of the things about seeing footage and pictures of Bernstein, but particularly footage, because he comes alive in motion, really, is, he was really sexy. Yeah. And he was known for that. Yeah. He was somebody who just, was fancied by people of both sexes. He was a very charismatic person, right? But he was also very sexy. Like, it's not just that people wanted to be near him or so on. It's like, yeah, people wanted to have sex with him, right? And Cooper does not communicate any of that in the opening sequences. I mean, he's obviously with people, he's having sex with people, but he himself in the performance, it does not exude kind of sexiness, really.
Yeah, I suppose so.
And the nose distorts the younger face in a way that fits the older face. So I thought young Bernstein, doesn't look like Bradley Cooper, and it also doesn't really look like Bernstein, because Bernstein was very handsome. I mean, he did have that nose. I don't have any problem with the use of a prosthetic, right? But, it's just kind of the way that it is realized in the film. And it's partly his performance, because he could be doing other things with his body, with his movement and so on. It kind of diminishes the handsomeness of both the character and the actor. At a moment in the narrative where it's kind of needed, you want that exuberance, that sexiness, that kind of, physical and emotional and talent reaching out, really.
I mean, I don't know how much I agree with that, just on basis that I don't know how harmful the prosthetic nose is to that. And I think you do get it through the kind of the joie de vivre of Bernstein as he's played by Cooper. He's kind of a love of life and his exuberance, and also so much of that early dialogue is written in this fast talking way that's very evocative of the 40s and 50s.
Yes. It's
quite deliberately so, I think. People kind of chatting back and forth, and that kind of conveys some of that as well. So, and the thing is about the nose is I never had any issue with it throughout. I mean, I never had any issue with it when it first emerged that he had this prosthetic nose. So this was back in, I think, spring last year, when I guess the trailer and like photos from the set came out, and people went crazy that he was playing a Jew face.
I thought that was
it's ridiculous because there is a negative association in the world of stereotype between Jewish people and large hooked noses. It's always part of the evil Jewish caricature that you get. But also, Leonard Bernstein had a big nose. This is part of what he looked like. And I was saying at the time, and Mark Harris wrote a defense of this.
Yes, that was a very good piece, I thought. Yes.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And one thing that he pointed out was people are looking at one particular shot. And if you look at this other shot, which no one's looking at, with like, you know, Bradley Cooper is at a different age and his face is at a different angle, and he's got the same prosthetic nose on, no one's having any issue with it. Yeah. It's just like one particular thing where the nose appears to stand out, people are going crazy about. And I was saying, like, let's fucking wait until we see it in action, maybe. Yeah. And you see it in action, and it makes perfect sense. It's not overdone. It contributes to his look perfectly, kind of accurately. It's fine.
Yes. I mean, I have a problem with it in the early scenes, not because, not because it's anti-Semitic or anything, just because it diminishes the look, right? So that, because Bradley Cooper is perceived by many to be a very handsome man. Leonard Bernstein definitely was. And kind of, to me, the way that nose is designed on the younger Bernstein, is... makes his face kind of wonky, really. So, I don't like it, and I don't think it serves the narrative. Later on, as soon as Bernstein hits middle age, that nose fits, and it very much resembles kind of Bernstein. It helps kind of conceive of that character at that age. But I didn't like it at the beginning.
I think the rest of the prosthetic and makeup work is fantastic as well. I mean,
it's all fun. Yeah.
The look of Bernstein as a 70-ish-year-old, in that opening and ultimately kind of closing segment, is remarkable. You look at his neck. Yeah. I mean, it's an old man's neck, and
sure.
It's pretty astonishing work, actually. The problem I have with Bradley Cooper is not in that I think he kind of gives a poor performance, that kind of thing. It comes down to this thing that I said at the start about actors directing themselves. There's a real self-importance vibe going on.
Yeah.
And Bradley Cooper has kind of, like, outside the film, I think part of the performance is Bradley Cooper as the auteur. The way I listened to this music when I was young, the interviews that he's giving about all this kind of stuff, how important it is to him. And it's very trying. And you get to the film, and when the film begins on that shot of him playing the piano from behind, the slow track in, it immediately communicates all the wrong things about the self-seriousness. And then you get to that scene, because then it started to win me over a bit when it was kind of quick and snappy and stuff. And then you get to that scene that we mentioned. What was the play on stage? The musical with all the sailors?
Fancy Free, I think.
Fancy Free, and you see them. It's that kind of whirlwind, sort of half slightly imagined thing going into the theatre and going up on stage and watching them, and it's all that sort of smiling at each other in completely implausible ways that I just hate. We're smiling at each other, having a great time, and then she says something like, is that what you want? Something like that. And he leans forward and he gets his big close up and he has this smile on his face and he says, "There's a lot of things I want."
Yeah.
I thought, oh God, you're such a fucking actor, aren't you?
I know, but I love that because it felt like a dream ballet, right? That whole thing.
Oof.
Like a 1940s dream ballet, but in black and white.
Do you know what I mean about Bradley Cooper?
I do. I exactly know what you mean. It is a very self-important use of himself, even though he himself is often quite wonderful in some scenes, I think, and hugely skilled. But the way that he conceives of those scenes is kind of unrelenting, uncompromising, and misjudged. So kind of there are entire scenes that are played like, so for example, the whole fight discussion between Felicia and Leonard Bernstein in the apartment, which is done in this hugely long take with the camera kind of distance. That it's there so that kind of to benefit the actors, right? Yeah, they're kind of interacting with each other. It's kind of long bits of dialogue, kind of in a way their skills get to really shine. But actually it doesn't serve the film,
Probably, yeah.
And there are many scenes like that. The scene in the park where they're talking and it's again a huge long shot, kind of, that, you're seeing them at a distance for a long time.
The use of long take I didn't dislike though.
No, I like the long take.
And there are times when
that one, I thought, was giving the actors primacy over the film.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But I do think that there's also... I like the ethos of letting the action play out in full. And those particular takes, there's certainly a couple early on where things are played in long take, but the camera is moving and restaging and that sort of thing. And that really works for me. And it's like you've real thought has been put into how that's being done.
To give an example of... So, I have mixed feelings about Cooper's performance because he is hugely skilled, but he's often not convincing, right? And I want to that moment where he arrives with Felicia and springs the surprise on his boyfriend, i.e., this is Felicia, this is the clarinet player, and you realize, like, the cruelty and harshness. It's basically like, I'm dumping you for her, and it comes out of nowhere for the other guy, right? And there's this look on Matt Bomer's face, like, just a sadness, right? A realization that I think communicates so much more than all of the fluty kind of voice gesture that, Bradley Cooper does in, what is quite a flowery performance. It's kind of, it's full of, I mean, obviously, on the one hand, there's a range there and there's a showing off of skills and so on, but I also think that kind of quite a lot of it is not necessary and certainly doesn't communicate the truth of the moment as clearly as Matt Bomer's very simple kind of, performance does in similar scenes, in their scenes together.
But there's also... The direction does benefit that, though, because it leaves the camera on Matt Bomer throughout. It doesn't cut away from him. You see that reaction in full.
That's true.
And that really works, because it's all about him at that point.
Yeah.
And the right decision has been made there to show that.
For a biography, for a film bio, like, it really is... So, because it's called Maestro, so you think it's about Bernstein. But actually... if you look at it as being about Bernstein, I think it's a real failure because the film doesn't really convey, the life or the career or the importance or, kind of the boundary breaking aspects of the life and the career. If you look at it as a picture of her, then clearly it's not, except in the last half it becomes more about her. And then also, if you look at it as a picture of a marriage, right, then I think it also kind of doesn't really succeed, right? Because a lot of those complications in that marriage are kind of glossed over or feel false. So, for example, Felicia might really not have loved him, but, he's young, he's talented, he's rich, he's on his way up, right? That might have been a decision why she might want to accept kind of that he's not, like, fully heterosexual. You want to be able to see kind of, those factors, those decisions, those things that kind of complicate life that, it's not that she's just a super nice person who's very accepting and open, right? I mean, kind of, what does it mean to be that accepting and open in 1943 anyway? Right? Like, kind of, you get no sense of that from the film, I don't think.
No. This is what I was saying about the film being illustrative.
I think you're right.
That's at best, and that's why I said, throughout I'm thinking, what is the point of this? What is the thematic through line? I can understand superficially it's about a marriage. It's about a guy who's gay or bisexual in a world in which that's kind of not okay. But of course, you never really get the feeling that it's not okay, because in his world it's constant and it's perfectly fine. And then maybe it's about the toll it takes on the marriage, and there's an element of that, and the toll it takes on the family. You get the thing with the daughter, having heard rumours about him, and on top of that, you're also thinking, like, this is about this great musical genius. Is it going to be expressed to me why he was such a genius? And it doesn't really. You get people talking about what a genius he is. And it's a very hard thing to get across, like what makes music so marvellous to someone who doesn't really understand. I'm not saying I don't understand it, but it's a tricky thing to convey. And probably the best decision that the film makes in that sense is by giving you that performance at Ely Cathedral. because you're given time and space to feel it, and it produces it so well. But even then, it's just a performance of a musical piece, and what's there to explain to you or to express to you why this conductor is such a genius and not some other conductor? You know, what makes him so great? I don't get that either. So that's what I'd say. Like, it all, like on paper, these ideas are all in place, and nothing is expressed. Nothing.
I mean, for me, there are two things. First, you don't, like I said, you don't really get a sense of the accomplishments of the person or the career, right? I think also I wasn't moved at all by any of it, except there were moments where I did feel a kind of excitement, right? You know, those shots at the beginning that I mentioned, or the use of the music sometimes, the music alone, yeah? So, you know, when they're playing ta-da-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, you know, from West Side Story, yeah? Kind of, you get the sense of the excitement of that music, right? And how new kind of it was, and the sense of danger, yeah? Kind of, so the music often kind of conveyed that feeling to me, right? Or made me feel. But actually the drama didn't. So in that sense, I think the film is a real failure, and I don't understand why it's been nominated, or, you know, why so many people are kind of picking it as one of the best films of the year. If they're picking it as one of the best films of the year, they haven't seen enough.
Yeah, it's a biopic. It's about a great American icon. It's Bradley Cooper writing and directing and acting, and it's all of that, and it's in black and white. I mean, it's fucking Oscar bait. That's what it is.
So you think the nose is like having no legs? It's like my left foot.
I mean, there's kind of an element of that. Yeah, I mean, he's putting on a voice as well, and so is Carey Mulligan. You know, which is not to say that those accents and those kind of patterns of speech aren't believable. I think they really are. And I mean, Carey Mulligan's took a while for me to get along with it. It felt very artificial, but I don't know. You know, Felicia, I don't know the person she was portraying and how realistic that is, and eventually I bought into it, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's Oscar bait. That's what this is.
Yeah, well, it succeeded. The bait hooked.
Yeah, what are its nominations, I wonder? So, Academy Awards nominations, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's a lot.
Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Original Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Makeup and Hairstyling, and Sound.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. Except for the screenplay. I actually don't think it's a very good screenplay. I think it's badly structured, and the scenes don't breathe. They don't come alive. I'm glad we saw it, though, and I'm glad we saw it in a big theater, really. I honestly don't think I would have finished it watching it on Netflix. I would have turned it off halfway through. Really.
Well, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, it does. But in many ways, I mean, I do think that your levels of absorption and so on are different in a big screen, you know, and I didn't begrudge the film for, you know, for using it in those ways. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't bored until I realized at some point that, you know, her death just kept dragging on, right? And I did think, where is the film going? Yeah, because there's still... And I thought, oh my God, there's still like an hour to go. Yeah. Right? What are they going to do? Right? So that...
but then it turned out it was only half an hour. You should have been anticipating. Because we thought it was half an hour longer than it was. But I mean, I was the same thing. You know, when you got to the 70s and the film turned into colour, I leant over to you and I went, we're not even an hour into this. You know, and as it turns out, okay, we're almost the halfway point. But I was thinking, God, an hour and a half. So yeah, all of that is kind of our experience of the duration of the film is not reliable because we were just misinformed.
Yeah, that's true. I do think so. We can't finish this without mentioning a kind of annoyance. I mean, I've used the word dishonest kind of, you know, quite a bit, but I resented as a gay man watching the men in Bernstein's life, kind of clearly so important to him, the hand holding and so on, being minimized by the film, right? Because, these people who are clearly so important in his life, the film really treats as if they were nobodies, as if they were interchangeable. Yeah.
Dalliances.
So I really resented that.
Yeah, I agree with that. The kind of the whole gay aspect of the film is given short shrift in several ways, and that's one of them. And another one that we've mentioned is that it makes it seem so easy. And it just can't have been.
Yeah.
I mean, the fear that Bernstein has when he's in the park embracing whichever one of his partners it is at the time, his fear is not that he'll be seen being gay in public. It's that, is it even a fear? He just kind of says, are people over there looking at me going, is that really him?
Yeah.
And it's a thing about fame or that sort of thing. But it's not, I suppose it doesn't quite come over as fear, and it certainly doesn't come over as fear of being found out.
Yes.
Which you would think would be a very plausible fear.
And the film likes to have it both ways, because there is this bit of dialogue where his mentor tells, the whole discussion about changing his name. But it actually begins by saying something like, it'll do you good to be married, right? Yeah, because, then you can, be less threatening. And also, how about your name, right? Like, So these, maybe for him, marriage was also a way of protecting himself, a way of advancing his career, that whether he loved her or how he loved her, then become kind of different questions when, marriage is seen as an absolute necessity if you're going to be a public person having a particular kind of career in life.
Yeah.
Those things are not rendered as drama, as a problem, as considerations, right? Kind of,
no.
So they're there on the edges of the film, but they're not dramatized.
And they should be that. I mean, the thing about changing his name, the idea is you should change your name to Leonard Burns and, essentially to kind of westernize it, non-Jewishify it. As so many people did.
Yes.
And he obviously, you see the kind of look of discomfort on his face when that's suggested. And then it's just like not brought up again. And it's obvious that he rejected that. We all know him as Leonard Bernstein. He never changed his name. So the film, it brings it up, suggests it, it goes away. And then this much bigger thing about something that you are actually, well, the question of whether he's hiding it about himself, that he's gay or bisexual, as the case may be. It doesn't really come up that he's hiding it. It's just, it's a part of his life that that he manages to never address. And the one time it is brought up by his daughter, as I said, who's heard these rumours, he's able to lie and pass it off as, but these people are jealous of me.
But I even hated that moment because, he's clearly lying at Felicia's request. But you never get a sense of anger at himself, disappointment, regret, shame at having lied, right? Like, kind of these are all things that must have gone in his head, right? So it's like the narrative takes you a little bit, but then drops everything, and kind of doesn't deal with things properly. So I really dislike that. And the scene with the change of name is similar. Right? Because it's laughed off in this contemporary way as if, like, oh no, we won't change our names. Well, why do you think so many people did change their names? Right? Because there were real costs and real dangers and, like, kind of, people weren't being, like, particularly cowardly or stupid for changing their name. They changed their name for a reason, right? Like, kind of, so it was a real kind of issue. That, that anti-Semitism kind of existed in powerful ways. That's why people changed their name, right? It wasn't just like...
Yeah. Well, it didn't play to me as being laughed off, although I maybe have to watch the scene again. But it played to me as essentially ignored by the film. Like, as I say, you get that... The one thing I really remember is the kind of look of discomfort on Bernstein's face as he's proposed, this. And it's clear that he is not interested in that, doesn't want to do it. But then the scene ends reasonably quickly after that with Felicia whisking him off to whatever, and it's never brought up again. So it's not so much laughed off as brought up and ignored completely.
Yes. So, which is characteristic of the film, actually, and it's the biggest problem with it. It never really comes alive, except in brief moments. Kind of. Still, I'm glad we saw it.
Well, it's over now, so.
Oh,
Look, it's better than A Star Is Born, I think.
well, I like The Star Is Born, so I don't agree.
Yeah.
This is a more complex film, but a greater failure. So, so on that note, thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.